So again, I'd just like to welcome all of you here. So as you can see in the slide, we have 3 intakes. We're fairly unusual for other programs at the college because our students are in classes pretty much 12 months a year. We have 3 intakes and we have 2 streams in the nursing program. So we have the full-time stream, which most of the classes are generally in the day, although you can have some classes later towards the evening. And that's a traditional program. So you do semester 1 and semester 2, regardless of what year part of the year you start, and then you take a semester off, and then you do semester 3 and semester 4. And then we have an 8-week consolidation where you're just out clinically with a preceptor. And our student rep here, Autumn, she is in the full-time stream. So she's just completing her 3rd term.
Yeah.
We also have an alternative delivery stream, and that's over 6 semesters. And there's no semester off. There's a reduced course load, although it still is considered full-time. So if you want OSAP, you can still apply for OSAP with that program. All those classes run in the evenings, and the clinical placements are on the weekend. So this, we find often students that get into the alternative delivery stream are people that have full-time jobs or maybe have parents, etc. And they find that that is quite convenient for them as well. Once you graduate from this program successfully, excuse me, you need to write the registration exam and the jurisprudence exam from the College of Nurses of Ontario, and then you would become a registered practical nurse. And your options are endless. And if you've been paying attention to the news in the past year or so, you certainly can see how important our nurses are to the health of our public. Autumn, anything you'd like to talk about? Do you want to talk about your time at the college?
It's been really great. It's a busy course. You're always doing like a big busy program, sorry, you're always doing something and there's always something that needs to be done. But your professors, your teachers are very good at making sure you're kept up to date. And as long as you're checking Blackboard and checking your emails, there was one thing I was told when I first got admitted into the program, and it was check your emails twice a day and check Blackboard twice a day. Once in the morning when you get up and once before you go to bed. And honestly, it's the best thing you can possibly do. And it was the best piece of advice that I was actually given. So just make sure you're constantly checking things and you can get through it no problem.
Thank you. So I'm not sure if you've been to other program information sessions for nursing. We have, so you, there's 3 components that you need to complete in the program. One of them is the theory component. So the theory component is essentially the classroom with a professor, and that's where you're going through your textbooks, and usually evaluations would consist of exams or tests. There might be some projects, group presentations, paper assignments. And to learn the skills that you're going to need to practice as a nurse, we have a lab, which essentially mimics what it looks like in a clinical setting. So it looks like a hospital. And in the lab, we have these very specialized mannequins. So you can actually have a fairly good representation of what it would be like to take care of a patient or to practice on the patient. And as you go through the program, the simulations experiences get more complex. The mannequin can actually talk. Have you had that yet, Autumn, where the mannequin talks to you?
We've seen it happen once, but I think that's more of a term for skill. They actually get to talk a little bit, but it was really neat when we were doing vitals. You can like hear the blood kind of going through, they mimic it, and you can feel the pulse on the arms. It's very neat.
And yeah, so it's really quite interesting to have that. And just to share with you, because I've been in the nursing field for almost 30 years now. When I went to nursing school many, many years ago, we didn't have these kinds of things. And a lot of it was, let's pretend that you're doing this. Let's pretend that you're doing that. So it's really quite exciting to have this option for our students. So when your first clinical placement, so in the term one, regardless of whether you're in the full-time stream or the alternative delivery stream, you're not out clinically seeing patients, you're in the lab and you're learning various nursing skills. In term two in the full-time stream, or in term three in the alternative delivery, you're out in the long-term care setting, putting those skills to practice. And usually you go out in a group of about 10 students and you will have a clinical supervisor. So you're never out in the clinical area without a nurse from Niagara College who will be overseeing you and supporting you, and of course evaluating you. The next time you're out in clinical, so in the full-time stream, and this is where Autumn is right now in term three, you're in the hospital. And so you spend half of your time on a medical unit taking care of patients, and the other half of the term you're in a surgical unit taking care of patients who are in various stages. Maybe they're waiting for surgery, or maybe they've had surgery. The next semester you go out, you're going to be in the complex continuing care. So these are patients that are have a variety of conditions. Sometimes they might be in rehab, and they need pretty intense nursing care as well. And then in the last semester of the program, which would be considered the practicum, it's 8 weeks, and you're out following a nurse and the nurse's full-time schedule. So you have an opportunity at that time essentially to integrate and synthesize all of the knowledge that you have. So when you have graduated from the program, you have a really great foundation as a generalist nurse. And our nurses get hired in the hospital, they get hired in mental health, they get hired in long-term care. So there's really a lot of different options for you if nursing is what you're thinking about. Often students will take sometimes will take a pre-health course if they want to get into the nursing program, and perhaps their high school grades weren't exactly where they want to be to get in. So as one strategy. And Niagara College has a pre-health program.
Looks like
sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry,
I was going to add to that. If you've been out of high school for a while, I know they brush up on a lot of the skills if you're referring to like writing essays or like studying and like the kind of like schooling side of it. They brush up on that in your courses in term one, and your professors are really good at walking you through the skills that you would need if you haven't been in school for a while.
Perfect. Looks like Ashley is potentially coming from a pre-health program from Georgian. And Gabby has gotten into the program. She just wants to know if she should be brushing up on anything like anatomy.
No, all of that will happen when you get into the program. And also, as Autumn said, we have the professors will walk you through things. And also we have a really great support. The library offers a variety of different courses and supports to help students with their writing, with their math, etc. So those things will all be introduced. We have a orientation session. It's usually the Friday before the classes start. And then all of the classes in term one, there's usually a lot of information in the beginning around how to be successful, strategies that you need to be thinking about. And certainly I certainly can't speak for all professors, and Autumn might have a better idea about this, but generally with the professors that I know, when there are assignments that are due, we walk you through what you need to be thinking about to complete your assignment successfully.
Yes, they definitely do. All of the professors that I've had so far have done that.
Perfect. Ashley asks, how much do you need physics for nursing? It's one of her programs that she's taking via pre-health.
Physics?
I unless you wanted to add something, I was going to say there's not a lot of physics. There was a funny joke that I kind of made. We were doing IVs in lab the other day, and that was the first time I've actually seen any kind of physics because of the way that the IV runs. And I laughed because I know some of the pre-health programs will go over physics, but you don't require a lot of physics in it
Mhm.
any actually.
And it's
Just-
not a required course. So even if you're coming from high school, that's not a course that we would look at. Or sorry, I don't look at them. The registrar, it's not a course that's looked at for nursing. So we look at English, for example, and your biology and
Chemistry, I believe.
I'm sorry?
Chemistry as well, I
Thank you.
believe.
Yes, and chemistry. Yeah. So I think that's the three. There's three. And I'm
At
taking
one time, some programs require physics or chemistry, which is probably why your pre-health program has it in it, just because some programs do a either or. So that might be why.
Mhm.
And of course, people that are in pre-health might not be going into nursing and they might need another health course. So I would think if you're going to go into occupational therapy assistant or physiotherapy assistant, there might be more need for things like physics there. So they're trying to ensure that the prerequisites for all of these courses would be met, I believe. And the learning is never lost. You never know when you might need something. So
Exactly. Yeah, true.
I know that it might be. Hello. All right, perfect. We have a question.
hi, Angela.
So, hi, Angela. How are you? I was going to say there's two Andreas.
Yeah, it was Allison Kuzno in the last presentation.
No worries. Angela Butt is the associate dean. Oh my gosh,
Associate Dean.
associate dean. Sometimes she is the associate dean for our health programs, nursing specifically. And would you care to say a few words about the program?
I'm sure it's been covered very, very well by Professor Bodner already. And thank you, Autumn, very much for joining us too as a student ambassador. Really appreciate it. And I'm sorry I'm late. I was in the international panel and then popped in on the PSWs to say good morning as well. But welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am exceedingly proud of our team and the program quality that we deliver. Just heard a testimonial from the student ambassador in the PSW program who's bridged over to PN that about brought me to tears. Just in terms of what it's meant for her to be at Niagara College and everything the faculty and support staff have helped her, she said, becoming the best her she could be. So yeah, welcome to this opportunity to learn about our programs, and I hope to see you at least virtually in person, if not actually in person, in the fall. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Angela.
Angela.
A couple of questions have come in. So Mahi wanted to enroll in practical nursing. They're on the wait list for May. So they're starting to do the PSW and then planning to do the bridge that Angela was just speaking about. But only top 10 would be selected. So what are there other ways to get into the practical nursing program is the ultimate question if she is not successful with the PSW bridge.
So I'm going to go back to that top 10 piece. The top 10 of the 20 who are taken into the bridge are guaranteed seats in the September intake. That doesn't mean that the other students who participate in the bridge, if they meet that 70% requirement, cannot proceed into the PM program. If there are seats available, they will be offered to them. And if there aren't seats available right in the September opportunity, they'll be waitlisted, for instance, for the January start of the second term of the PN program. So just because you're not part of that top 10 does not mean that you will not be able to proceed into the practical nursing program. So I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Certainly you can always apply to term one and gain entrance that way. It can be a little bit more challenging. I'm sure Autumn could attest to this, is it's a great big pool of people against whom you're competing to hit that, whatever the comparative averages happen to be applying into that term one. The advantage for coming in through the bridge is that it's only PSW's graduates from the Niagara College program against whom you're competing for those spots. Does that help a little bit?
I think so. Perfect. Thank you. Next question. Is there a typical schedule for practicum/clinical?
So if
you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say for clinical, for your placement, if that's what you're referring to, you get to select which day you want to do that on. Like it's a first come first serve basis. So you want to log on right away when you're selecting it. But You get to pick. So my term 2 placement, I had Wednesdays. Some people have Thursdays, some people have Fridays. And for term 2, it's the same thing. Because of COVID, there were a couple extra days given. So Saturday and Sunday were also included. But that day is strictly for your placement days. You don't have any other classes. Whatever day you have placement on is just for your placement. And then you have your classes for the rest of the week.
Thank you.
And placements do start when you're in the courses. If you're in the alternative delivery or in the full-time delivery, they're usually a daytime clinical, and you usually have to be at the clinical site very early in the morning. So for
6
any of you,
7 typically, sorry. 6:45, 7 a.m.
and the placements are generally throughout the Niagara region, so it just depends on where you live. You would have to also consider travel time, etc. And if any of you have children, you have to be thinking about childcare issues as well. When you go into your consolidation, which is the 8-week component at the end of the term, you're going to be following a nurse's schedule, which means that you can work days, evenings, or nights, or weekends. So there'll be, and that's what a nurse does. So there's, when you graduate and you're working as a registered practical nurse, then the shifts can be, depending on where you work, they are all over the place.
So this question was asked a little bit earlier. Angela, I'm not sure if you could maybe give us a bit more information. Do you know anything about the palliative care program?
Sure. So the palliative care program is one of our grad cert programs, and it's generally available to international students. It's not that domestic students can't apply, so I'm not sure who's asked the question. The only thing to know, if you're a domestic student applying to the palliative care program, it is not supplemented in any way like our other diploma and certificate programs. So that means that you end up paying the whole cost of the education, which I believe is around $14,000 to $15,000, which gives you an idea of how much our tax base supplements the diplomas that we generally offer. In the palliative care program, just as the title states, you would be learning about how to provide palliative care to patients, and all of the different environments or settings that might be required in, or patient conditions. And lots of times people assume that palliative care refers only to those last few weeks, days, moments before death, and it certainly does not. Palliative care can be delivered while somebody is still seeking active curative treatment for whatever their disease process happens to be. And at its very simplest, palliative care is defined as comfort care. How do we help somebody remain comfortable throughout their disease trajectory? It's open to not only nurse graduates, but also at this time to graduates from other healthcare professions. But generally, I would say that it's because most of the faculty teaching into the program are nurses, it is very definitely taught through a nursing lens.
Perfect, thank you. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen while we're going through the questions. Someone asks, are IT skills important for nursing students?
Andrea?
Did you say IT?
Yeah.
IT.
Yes, I would say, and particularly since we've changed the mode of delivery because of COVID, all of the classes are online. So certainly having some technology familiarity is really important. The other elements also that you would need with a computer is actually having familiarity with your computer as a word processor to ensure that you can produce papers or presentations that are going to meet the criteria for the individual courses. And then Autumn, if you were in the class, or sorry, in the seminar a little bit earlier, Autumn had referred to something called Blackboard, which is our learning management system. And it's where courses are held. It's where there's a lot of communication and files are uploaded. So I would say that they are important. You don't need to be an IT expert, We do have an IT department, and they are wonderful when, and they are very responsive when IT problems happen, and they do. So, so it is something. We've had students though who've come back to school after being out of school for 20 or 25 years and are just learning how to do email and internet, etc., and they are successful. So it's, you don't need to be an expert, but it is something that you will become familiar with as you move through the program.
Okay, thank you. Can we go to explain the difference between an RPN and an RN?
Definitely. Angel, do you want to talk or?
That's the age-old question, right?
Yes.
Very, very simply, it has to do with the right care for the right person in the right place. And the more acute and less predictable a patient's care needs become, the more likely they're going to move into the realm of RN care. There is no black and white line about where that line exists. And depending on which department you're working in and the added skills that the RPNs and RNs have learned in those areas will dictate that to a large degree. There's quite a complex algorithm in the College of Nurses of Ontario about how that care decision needs to be made. They all have access to the same controlled acts depending on their education and skill set. But it really has to do with, at the end of the day, making sure that we're doing a conscientious assessment of, are we providing the right care to the right person in the right setting? And that's why we have the privilege of being a self-regulated profession, is that we are trusted by the public to be able to make those decisions in a very mindful, self-reflective, really aware of one's own gaps in knowledge and skill to make those decisions and recognize when care has to be passed off to another professional. What would you say, Andrea? What did I forget?
No, I think that's absolutely accurate. The only other element is that because the registered nurse will often be taking care of the more complex and unpredictable patients, their schooling is a little bit different. So our program, the practical nursing program, or throughout the province, the practical nursing program is a 2-year program. The RN program is a 4-year program. You learn, the registered or the practical nurse learns very much the same basic foundational knowledge as the registered nurse. The registered nurse goes into more depth, perhaps, but the textbooks are the same.
I was going to add to that. I have a few friends who are in RN programs at other universities. And when I talk to them and discuss things, a lot of the content overlaps. It's a lot of the same stuff that's being discussed between both, just to kind of overlap with what Andrea was saying.
Perfect, thank you. So this is, I think, maybe a 2 or 3 part question. Mahi's the person who was interested in PSW and doing the bridge. They're curious if they could do PreHealth Science for September and get into the May intake. I may have an answer for that. And then does doing PreHealth Science guarantee that they would be selected for the practical nurse program? I think they're just looking for a little bit more of a guarantee. Maybe you could talk about how many people do the bridge successfully. And as for doing the pre-health in September and entering in May, the deadlines don't actually match up for applications, unfortunately. So your marks for your first semester wouldn't be completed by the time they would need to be submitted for a May application, just to answer that portion of it, but I will let everyone else take the rest.
So there is no guarantee with the pre-health program in terms of a seat into the practical nursing program. You're still competing against the same pool of people. Although I do believe, and Kendra, you may know this better than I, that the marks are not necessarily apples to apples, that the marks that somebody receives as a GPA for their high school education may not weight as heavily as the marks that somebody receives in pre-health. Is that true?
As far as I understand, it is still considered the same.
Okay.
So it's all EVO level, but they can mix and match. That's one thing that the admissions office does is really well. So if you say your English in high school was higher than an English mark that you did in a secondary, they'll take whatever's highest.
Okay, thank you. But again, you're still competing with the same pool of people. The advantage, I guess, to the pre-health is it does help scaffold you in a little bit to the intensity of what a college program can be like, so that when you do jump into either the practical nursing program or the PSW program, it doesn't take you by surprise what that course intensity is going to be. Does that answer the question?
I think so, but I will let Mahi answer in the chat or in another Q&A if they have additional questions. Gabby's asking, how does specialization work if someone wants to work in peds, I think that's it, or the NICU, etc., after graduating?
That's so when you graduate from a nursing program, and this would be whether you graduate from a practical nursing program or you graduate from a BSN program at a university, you're considered to be a generalist nurse, which means that you can apply and work in a variety of areas. To become a pediatric nurse, for example, that would mean that you would apply to work in a pediatric setting. And then once you get hired, you would get the specialized training that you need to work in that particular area. To work in somewhere like, I think you mentioned the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, most of the time to work in an intensive care unit, whether that is a NICU or an adult critical care unit, it depends on the organization. Some hospitals have in-house training, meaning that you learn in the hospital. Sometimes nurses go back to school and they will take a critical care nursing course or an ER nursing course, etc., which is often offered through places like Mohawk or George Brown or the Missioner Institute or things like that. So some of that's going to depend on where you want to be working in the population. So, but certainly we have nurses now who are working in the pediatric population who have graduated from our practical nursing program.
Perfect, thank you. There aren't any open questions right now. This might be a wonderful opportunity for Autumn to talk a little bit more about her experience.
Sure, I can do that. I don't know, some of the questions that I was given to kind of think about was why I chose Niagara College. For me, I'm coming from Haldimand County, Hamilton kind of side, and I tend to enjoy like I'm not a big city girl, so I like my kind of country, kind of homey feeling. And when I came on campus at Niagara College, that's exactly what it felt like. It's homey, everything is neat and clean and organized, and it's just a very beautiful campus all around. I also loved that there were nice small class sizes. So I know at high school, their class sizes of typically like 30, maybe 35. It's the same thing at Niagara College. You have class sizes of like 30, 35 people, give or take. But it's very nice because you really get to know your professors one-on-one. They really get to know who you are and how you are as a student. And as you learn to become good at advocating for yourself, you're able to build those connections with your professors. For example, I'm not a strong math student, so as long as I was able to communicate that with some of my professors, they're able to help you out and give you additional work and be there for you when you're struggling with something. Something else I was told when I first came into, it actually might have been Andrea who said it, I can't really remember, but they said, we're not here to fail you. They don't want to see us fail. All of the professors want to see you succeed. And as long as you're willing to work for it and they see you trying for it, they'll do everything in their power to make sure you're passing and succeeding. And that kind of covers what I love being about an NC student as well. It's that personal feel that you get. And you're rewarded for your drive, for your passion for things. So I really want to be a nurse. And after being in this program, after talking to my teachers and other faculty, you really get a sense of how excited you are to be in a profession that you love.
Awesome.
So.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Perfect. Okay, so I have a couple more questions that popped in. After completing practical nursing at NC, someone wants to know what further study into like practical nursing, is there a bridging, transfer process, applying for university, that aspect?
Right. So it depends really on what you want to do. Certainly, I've been teaching in the program since 2007, and I've seen huge changes in what the registered practical nurses are able to do out clinically. In the past, if nurses wanted to go into places like the ER or more complex or critical areas, they often went back to school and became registered nurses. And what we're seeing now is we're seeing our nurses hired into the ER. Yeah, I know that in Hamilton Health Sciences, they're using the registered practical nurses in the critical care areas as well. Now, again, back to what Angela said, they might not be taking care of the most critical patients, but they've got in-house training to manage many of the kinds of patients that are there. You can do a bridging program from the practical nursing program into the BSN program. So a BSN program is a 4-year program at a university. The bridging program would make it 3 years, and the first year would be a transitional year, learning at if you're coming right from high school or you haven't had the experience at a university, learning at a university is quite a bit different than the college. And I've taught in both settings, and from my perspective, I love the college setting, and I love Niagara College for many of the same reasons that Autumn said, because the opportunity is there to have smaller classes, to connect and know students. And teaching at the university, there's a lot more independence of the students. The classes are larger. So if you've taken a practical nursing program at a college, the first year in the bridging is essentially to get you used to being in the university setting, and then you would do 2 more years, and then you would come out with your BSN. So that would be one option. Sometimes students, the bridging programs, to get into the bridging program sometimes can be challenging. So sometimes students just opt to just apply to do a BSN program and start from the beginning again. And there are many, depending on the areas that you work. So for example, if you are interested in, as we talked about earlier, palliative care, there's a number of different kinds of palliative care courses, online courses that you can specialize in. You can take specialization in wound care, or if you wanted to be an OR nurse, you could take the OR course at Mohawk. And there's a variety of extra courses that you can take. So if you graduated from the practical nursing program and decided that you wanted to work with heart patients in cardiology, you could take a telemetry course so that you could learn how to read the ECGs, those kinds of things. One of the things that we talk about with nursing, and this isn't just nursing at Niagara College, this is the profession of nursing. And we are a regulated health profession, meaning that we have to answer to our regulatory body, the College of Nurses of Ontario. So when you graduate from the nursing program, and hopefully it's the Niagara College nursing program, it's the end of the beginning of your nursing education. But nurses are lifelong learners. So the expectation is that you are going to be learning your entire career. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, again, that you have to go back to do a BSN, et cetera. But every year, the expectation is that you have done some kind of learning to enhance your knowledge, to make sure that you're meeting the minimum standards of practice from the College of Nurses, and that you are going to be the best nurse that you can be to take care of your patients. So.
Well said. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns?
If there isn't, I would just like to chat a little bit more about what Angela talked about when she came on about our team. We have a fabulous, fabulous team in the practical nursing program to help support students through their education. And that team includes the faculty. So these are the nurses that are going to be teaching you in the classroom, in the lab, and most of the, I would imagine, I'm trying to think about how many hundreds of years of education and experience we have. Because if I look for myself, where I'm almost 30 years in nursing, and I'm only one of about 14 faculty, 30, 60, we probably have a few hundred years of nursing experience just with the faculty group. We have the nurses that work in the lab, and then we have a variety of nurses, who, many of whom are still working clinically, who come in and they take students out as clinical supervisors. And we are a really devoted, caring, committed team. And it's, for me, a real joy and privilege to be working here. And I echo what Autumn had said, that I know how committed my colleagues are to ensuring that students do well in the program.
Well said. There was a question. So someone had a previous experience. I'm just looking at the exact wording they used. I apologize. So currently working in a hospice unit.
Okay.
Do you think that experience will be beneficial as they search for jobs in Canada?
It won't hurt if you're talking about a nursing job or talking about working at other hospices. I think any of that experience is helpful. One of the benefits of nursing is that many of the things that you learn are transferable, that a lot of the knowledge that you have, you can apply in a variety of different clinical areas. And then you just specialize. But certainly working in a hospice, elements like the familiarity with an environment, a healthcare environment, learning how to communicate, learning how to work with colleagues, deal with patients, those kinds of things, absolutely helpful.
Perfect. There was a question about if they look at your math marks. I'm just in the process of answering it, but I'll answer it out loud as well. Is they do. They are going to be looking at your mathematics grade 11, CM, or U are equivalent. All right. They work in an oncology unit. The person who's working in hospice.
Okay. Yeah.
Someone asks in the chat, is this a bridging course for undergraduate or graduate courses? So I know we spoke about it a little bit. We could talk just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. So you can complete the practical nursing program, and then you can apply to bridge to another, like a registered, a BSN program through Nipissing, etc. We are not in itself a bridging course. So we are the practical nursing program is a standalone nursing program. Other things as well, we've been talking a lot about our practical nursing program, which we're very proud of. But the college, as Autumn said, the college itself, the campus is beautiful. We have wonderful services. And hopefully you can take a virtual tour if you haven't had an opportunity yet to take a virtual tour of the campus so that you can see how beautiful the campus is, and take a look at our the labs, etc. And when we do get back on campus, and certainly if you join us in the practical nursing program, the lab component is on campus now, so you will have some opportunities to be there. And we're hoping with fall, as Kendra said in the beginning, more and more programs are going to be on campus, assuming that the public health measures are okay. But even walking through the hallways and seeing people, you get a sense of how warm and friendly people are at the college. Like, it really is. We talk about something called Niagara College DNA, but there really is this sense of connection and community at the college. And I've worked in a number of different places, and it's extremely wonderful to work at the college. It's also, in my experience, very unique, that I really haven't worked in other places where there is this sense of community, not only with people in our own little, I was going to say our little school of practice in PSW, but it's big. Our school is quite big, but there is this really wonderful sense of community with everyone at the college. And I think for coming into a post-secondary, I invite you to consider that element as well, and how much that sense of community can be a support for you during your educational journey.
Can I tell a little story that really, for me, exemplifies just what you said, Andrea? So across from my office is one of the Tim Hortons kiosks. And a couple of years ago, I saw our past president, Dr. Dan Patterson, kind of sneaking around the Tim Hortons kiosk. There was no lineup at the moment. And so because his behavior was kind of peculiar, I stopped to watch him. And what Dr. Patterson was doing was waiting at the Tim Hortons until a couple students arrived so he could buy them their morning coffee and muffin. And I was like, wow, like what other organization does the president of the organization hang out to make sure that he can buy somebody coffee? And that's the NCDNA.
I was gonna, to piggyback on that, there was one professor that I had just before all this COVID stuff happened where she's like, okay, let's take a 10-minute break during our 3-hour lecture. And she goes, okay, I'm going to go buy everybody coffee now who wants a coffee. And she literally bought pretty much every single student in the lecture hall a coffee. And it, like, I never even thought that that would be something that they would do, but it's like that. And it just made everybody's day.
And I've had students buy me coffee as well, right? So it works both ways. So it really is a joy. And I see our academic advisor has just joined us. Hello, Jody.
I'm sorry, I knew I was muted. I was answering a question in the question part. So there was a question to answer there. Hello, everybody. Okay. So there was a question in the question and answer thing that was from an international student asking how many students were coming from India to the practical nursing program. And I was just responding by saying, unfortunately, international students can't apply to the practical nursing program, but we do have the international graduate programs for any students that are international looking to take nursing here.
I think Cindy was interested in palliative care if memory serves.
Yes, so that's our international graduate program. So then that they can apply for those.
Perfect. So another question that we had in the chat is, if someone is already has a bachelor's in nursing and is interested in pursuing a master's, do we have any recommendations?
That's beyond me, so.
Yeah, so I guess there's pretty much every university that has a nursing program has a master's program. And there's different streams of a master's in nursing. So you can focus on education, you can become a nurse practitioner if you still want to have the clinical element. And, you know, some universities, so for example, if you did your master's degree at McMaster, that's a Master of Science. It's not a Master of Science in nursing, so it's very science focused. If you did a master's degree at Brock, it's a Master of Arts. So I think for applying to a master's program, it probably would be helpful to just have a thought about what you want to accomplish with your master's, and then sort of start thinking about the stream that you want to go to. Because certainly in nursing, there's many elements that you can do, but if you're interested in public health, nurses sometimes take a master's of public health, for example. So there's a lot of programs. Some people, you can also do your master's in nursing. You can do it in an online program. I did mine in an online program because I had a full-time job, which I couldn't give up. Didn't want to give up, but couldn't give up. So there's a lot of different options for you. So perhaps just reflecting on what you would like to do with your master's can point you in the right direction. Angela, anything else?
No, I would agree 100%. Like each school of nursing at various universities will probably have a different, something they're known for, even if it's not official. But you want to do your research into your universities to see what their strengths are, to then have that master's accomplish what you want it to. Because just like Andrea said, depending on what your purpose is for that additional credential is going to drive the decision of which institution you go to, for sure.
Perfect. So I have 2 more questions, and I think these will be our last 2 questions just to keep on time. One, I think actually Autumn would be perfectly poised to answer. How difficult was the HOE or the HOAE exam?
I was looking at that too and waiting for a chance to respond to that. I kind of figured I'd be responding to that. Honestly, I didn't find it super duper difficult. I think I mentioned earlier I have a few friends who are also in nursing, so I went and took it with my friend. And you definitely get a sense of like where your skills lie. I also mentioned earlier, I'm not a strong math student, and you can see where that area kind of falters, but there were other components to it that they're looking at. Some, like, I can't remember exactly what the titles of them were called now, it's been a while, but they were more like personable skills, some of your English skills. But the questions themselves aren't super duper difficult. It's very hard to kind of explain, but honestly, if you're worried about like the difficulty level, it's not super hard. You'll be okay as long as you've it's covers a lot of stuff you've touched on in school from grade
There are
11
Hoey
grade
prep.
12.
There are Hoey prep things that you can go through, so you can get books and stuff like that. A lot of students do struggle actually with the Hoey. It's you'd be surprised at how many people don't do that well at it. So I mean, that it has been a struggle for a lot of students, but it wouldn't be unusual for you to struggle for it. But we do have those. You can actually go on Amazon and get those Hoey prep books that are really helpful for you to do that as well. And when we're on campus, we usually have a Hoey prep course as well, but we haven't been offering that since we've been online. So hopefully in the future, when we get back on campus, you'll be able to participate in that as well. So, and that helps you. They practice all those skills with you and everything in different areas. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering all the questions, ladies. I love having such a panel of experts. Makes my job so easy. So thank you so much. Thank you everybody for, go ahead. Sorry, Angela.
I was just gonna say, I would really like to thank Autumn, especially because she's moving into the latter part of her term, and I'm sure her workload is intense. So Autumn, thank you so much for spending this Saturday morning with us. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Kendra.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to do it. I love our programs at NC, all of them. Even though I do say the mannequins give me the heebie-jeebies, but I am not a nursing student, clearly.
You should try driving around with them in your vehicle. It's a lot of fun.
Ooh.
For sure. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone,
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks again, Autumn. Bye.
Oh,
Bye,
no
Joe.
problem. Thank you.
Bye, Angela.